Hi everyone, I'm Scott from Costumers for Christ and you're watching Creative Costuming. Today I'm going to show you how to make a spandex bodysuit from scratch. But first I want to take just a minute to tell you about my brand new book, Holy Heroes, The Gospel According to DC and Marvel. This book explores the world of cosplay and comic book characters while drawing spiritual and moral life lessons from their stories. So if you're a fan of comics and a follower of Christ, or if you just want to know a little bit more about one or the other, then this book is for you. So you can go to holyheroes.org or just click here and this link will take you to my blog where you'll find a description of the book along with some early endorsements and a list of online retailers where you can buy the book. And hey, once you've read it, I would love to hear what you think, so go ahead and shoot me a message or just leave a comment in the comment section. Now, back to our tutorial. Let's go over your supplies. First, you're going to need a pair of scissors. You will need a washable marker or a piece of chalk or disappearing ink pen, just something that you can mark the fabric with that you can then wipe away later. You're going to need a tape measure, or two actually, if you have them. And you're going to need some stretch fabric. Now, if you're new to costuming and you haven't ever worked with spandex before, then I highly recommend starting out with cotton spandex. It feels kind of like t-shirt material, but it still has just as much stretch as regular spandex does. And so the reason that I recommend it is because it's a whole lot easier to work with. It doesn't slip or slide around like regular spandex tends to do. So cotton spandex is what you should be looking for if you're new to it. If you're more experienced, then I recommend using Milliskin spandex. It's a little bit higher quality and it looks fantastic for costumes. Now the last thing you're going to need is this downloadable template. Just click the link in the description below and that will allow you to download this pattern. It comes with 2 pages. The second page is just this diamond pattern. You're going to cut that out and I'll show you what to do with it later. The first page is a diagram including measurements of what your spandex bodysuit will look like. Now if you are around my same height and weight, if you're between 5'10" and 6'2" and you have an average or athletic build, then you're just going to use the exact same measurements that I have plugged in here for this bodysuit. If you're significantly taller or shorter or thicker or thinner, then you're going to have to plug in your own measurements. And it doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman, we use the same pattern, you're just going to change the measurements to your own. So the first thing I'm going to do is show you how to take those measurements and then how to plug them in on the diagram. So this is where you're going to want to get your measuring tape. And the first measurement you need is your inseam. So take one end and you want to lay that right up along your crotch and then measure down to your ankle. You're going to take that number, which on me is 28, should be 30, but I'm wearing my, you'll notice I'm doing all this with my jeans and my shirt on and stuff. You would want to do this in tight-fitting clothes or no clothes at all so you can get good measurements. I already have my measurements, so I'm just showing you how to do it. But you're going to take that number and write it right here. That's the inseam number. Next, we're going to measure the torso. And for this, I want to sling this around my neck. And you want to measure from the tip of your measuring tape, you want to take that down to your crotch, and then you want the other end to be right here in your collarbone, kind of where you can press that down. And that's the number you're going to write in right here. That's from the crotch to the collarbone. See there? While leaving this here, you're going to take your other measuring tape, and the first measurement you're going to take is around the widest part of your hips. So you want to grab, wrap around. You want to take that measurement around the widest part of your booty, and you're going to take that. Now I've got 40 inches, and I'm going to divide that by 4. And so you're going to take that number, and you're going to put it right here. Okay? So you would, if you got like me, if you got 40 inches on your hips, then you're going to write a 10 right there. Then you're going to make sure this is all positioned right. And you're going to measure the narrowest part of your waist. So you just come around here, get that number, and again, divide by 4. I've got 36, so I'm going to write down 8. And by the way, you want to be doing this pretty tight. You want it to be snug. You don't want your spandex hanging loosely on you. So you want to pinch and squeeze as you do this. So then you write that number down here. And then you also want to take note of how far that was from the bottom here. See, inch 1, and I came up to about 10 or 11 inches. Normally I would actually be around 10 inches. So you write down the distance from here to here, right there on that spot. Then you're going to come up a little higher, and you're going to measure your chest. You want to be just below your armpits. And again, I've got a 40-inch chest. Divide that by 4, and then write down the number 10, or whatever your number comes up to, right here. And again, you want to take note, how far is this from this? On mine, I was 10 inches from waist to chest line. Okay, and that's where you write this number. Next, we're going to do our arms. And that's a pretty simple one. You just take one end, put it to your armpit, take the other end, and hold it out like this. And you're going to measure from armpit to wrist. Armpit to wrist. And then you write that number down right here. And lastly, you're going to measure your bicep. And you want to measure around the thickest part. And again, do it tight. You want it to fit snugly. So then you take that number, divide it by 2, and write it down right here. So if you've got 20-inch biceps, you're going to write a 10. If you've got 12-inch biceps, you write a 6 right here. And that's all the measurements that you really need to have. Everything else is pretty much universal. I mean, the width of someone's wrist or ankles, that doesn't change much from person to person. So we're going to take all of these measurements, and the next step is to transfer this diagram onto the fabric. Alright, for this next part, we're going to transfer the template that we have onto the fabric. And as you can see, you're going to want to spread your fabric out over a nice flat surface. And you need to have at least 60 inches by 60 inches of fabric in order for it to fit all properly. I recommend just buying 2 yards of fabric, and that way you have extra if needed. And what we're going to do is we're going to spread this all out like this, and then we're going to take the edge and we're going to fold it in about 10 inches. You may need to go a little bit further in than that if you have a larger chest than I do. But if you remember from taking the measurements, my chest was 40 inches, a quarter of that is 10 inches, and so we're going to fold in about 10 inches. Alright, once you've got your fabric all smoothed out and folded over like that, we're going to start doing our measurements. First thing, and I like to use a yardstick rather than the measuring tape for this. You can still use measuring tape, the yardstick is just nice and firm. So we're going to take first and measure from the bottom ankle. So we're going to go 2 inches in, make a little hashtag there with your marker, and a hashtag there. And then 5 1/4 inches in from there, and just make a little dot right there. Okay, that's all you got to do. Next, we're going to do the inseam, and on my inseam, it's 30 1/2 inches. Remember, you just use your own measurement, so if you got a shorter inseam or a longer one, just adjust for that. I'm going to make a little mark right here at 30 1/2 inches. And then what we're going to do is we're going to draw a little bit of a curve right there, and then connect this dot over to there. It's almost a straight line. You want that curve to reach about just an inch, and then come up to meet your straight line. There. Now we have this drawn onto our fabric. Next step is to go 25 1/2 inches. That's my torso length. So we're going to scoot down just a bit. 25.5 inches. And I'm going to put a dot right up here to mark the top of my collar. Then, if you remember, from the center of the crotch line out to here, you're going to measure, and on my hips are just under 40 inches, so I'm going to measure 9.5 inches, and just put a little dot, just like that. Then you're going to come in, I'm going to go up 9.25 inches and out 8 inches. So I'm going to measure 9.25 inches and then up 8 inches. And again, just put a little dot. And then same thing, I'm going to go up 10.25 inches and then out 10 inches. And again, you just put a little dot. Once you've done that, then you're going to come up above the collar. You want to go up 3 inches and then over 2.25 inches. Or 2 3/4 inches. And make a little dot. And then we're just going to connect those two dots with a curve. So we'll go like this. And there you have your neckline. Next we're going to draw from the shoulder to the armpit. We already have dots for that. So you just want to come in about 1/4 inch and then start coming down almost at a straight line until you get just above that armpit line, and then you curve out to it. So just draw a line that should look like the line right here, going from there to there. And then we're just going to connect these other dots. So you go from the armpit, gently marking it down to the waistline. And then from the waistline, you want to curve outward toward the hip. And then from the hip line, it's pretty much just a straight line down to that dot that we made over here at the ankle. Okay, and then we just connect these two. And there you go. You've got your entire bodysuit all sketched out. You've got this folded over neatly, so we're going to cut both layers at the same time. And there we go. This is the front half of your bodysuit. You'll notice that the front has a scoop neck here. That's to allow for your neck. And what we're going to do is just get the scrap here out of the way. And then we're going to take this and unfold it. And we're going to lay it face down so that the outside of the costume is facing each other onto the fabric. Once you've got it all smoothed out, you're just going to cut along the edges of the first layer in order to cut the second layer to match. The only difference between the front and the back of the bodysuit is that the back does not scoop down at the neck. So I'm just going to sketch out a little line here to remind me not to cut down there. So the back will be almost a straight edge, just a slight curve to it, but not scooping down like the front does. And then you're just going to cut that out using the top layer as your pattern. Okay, once you've cut all the way around your fabric and you now have two separate layers laying on top of each other, before you move them, I've got one more step for you to do, and this is going to save you a lot of time and energy later. I hate pinning things, and so instead of pinning things, I put little hashtag marks all along the sides of the costume to make sure the spandex lines up with itself when I sew. Now again, if you're using cotton spandex, that's not really a problem because it won't slide around on you anyway. But if you're using milliskin or regular spandex, it slides around a lot, so having these hashtags is really useful. And I just put them about every 6 inches. I just put a tiny little mark on that layer and then another one on the layer below it. Tiny little mark on that layer and another one on the layer below it. Keep it right on the edge, because if you go more than 1/4 of an inch in, then your sewing machine won't go over the spot. So a tiny little mark and a little dot there. Do that all the way around, and then I'll show you how to cut out the arms. Okay, once you're finished putting all your hashtags on, you can slide this out of the way for now, and you're going to pull the remaining fabric that you have here together, and we're going to do somewhat of the same thing. Get your pattern ready, and what we're going to do is we're going to fold it in half, and then we're going to use the measurements from the sleeve that we have here to line it out. All right. So first we want to start from this edge, and we're going to go 3.5 inches in. I can't find any of my stuff. 3.5 inches in, and we're going to make a little hashtag mark. Just dot that so you can find it later. Then we're going to go 19.5 inches. And this time you don't want to put a dot there because that's going to be right in the middle of your sleeve. But you want to mark that, and then with another ruler go 6.5 inches up. Of course, remember to plug in your own measurements as you're doing this, not necessarily the same as mine. But put a little dot up there, and then we're going to connect this dot to this dot. Just like that. Okay, and that's our sleeve. But we need to have a curve coming up to the top of the shoulder. And that curve is going to be the exact same curve as you made for your bodysuit. So you're going to take the bodysuit edge, line up the armpit point with the point that we just made here, and then bring this down to the end of the fabric. And so you're just going to follow that same curve in order to get your shoulder line. And these lines will come up from here to here on your bodysuit once it's sewn together. So that's how those meet. Now we can cut this one out. And you should end up with a sleeve that looks like this. Then what you're going to do is the same thing. In order to get the other sleeve, you lay this face down onto the fabric and cut around it, using this as your pattern, and then you'll have two sleeves. Alright, once you've got both sleeves cut out, like this, the only thing left to cut is this diamond piece that we talked about earlier. So you just grab a scrap piece, whatever's left, lay that on it, trace it, and then cut it out. And once you've got that cut out, then you take your sleeves, you take that piece and the bodysuit, and we'll head over to the sewing machine. Okay, now that you've got your fabric and your pattern all cut out and ready to go, the next thing we need to do is make sure that your sewing machine is all set up properly. First, you want to make sure that you have some matching thread both on the spool and in the bobbin. And then you want to make sure that you've got the right kind of foot and the right kind of stitch for sewing this project. If you have a brother sewing machine like mine, I highly suggest switching the regular foot for the overlocking stitch foot. And this is labeled, if you have a brother, this is foot G. So you just look for foot G and you switch out this one and put in foot G. And then the stitch that goes with that, you can see here, is number 7. You want to use stitch number 7. On most brother sewing machines, that's the number you're going to be looking for. But you can also find it by the design. It's a zigzag back and forth with a straight edge down the side. So that's the stitch that you're looking for. And what this stitch does is it's an overlocking stretch stitch. That means it will seal the edge of the fabric and still allow the fabric to stretch. It will stretch with the fabric. This is by far the best stitch that you can use when sewing spandex. It seals the edge, it holds up, it's very sturdy. I've never had one of these seams pop. Now, if you don't have this kind of sewing machine, or say you don't have that stitch, or you don't have a foot like this, you can still use the regular foot, and what I recommend using is stitch number 5. Stitch number 5 on most brother sewing machines. If you have a Singer, you're going to look at the shape, not at the number. But this one, as you can see, it's a zigzag dotted line. That will still stretch with the fabric, but it won't create the nice finished edge. It won't seal the edge of the fabric for you, but it'll still work. So, now that you've got the right foot and your thread is all ready to go, and you're set to the right stitch, we're going to take our fabric and we're going to start by sewing the sleeve, the shoulder of the sleeve to the shoulder of the bodysuit. So you want to line up those edges. You can see here, this is the neck on the bodysuit, and this is, if I get it out, this is the sleeve. So you're going to take the edge of the sleeve and you're going to line it up with the shoulder of the bodysuit. Just like this. Doesn't really matter which end you start at, but you just make sure it's lined up properly. Feed it underneath the sewing machine and then let that foot down. And the foot has a little edge to it so that you can butt the fabric right up against the edge of this foot, and that allows the stitch to go over and back so that you're actually sealing that edge. You want to lock it in place before you go anywhere. And then you stitch your line together. And you want to be careful as you sew to make sure that you're getting both layers of fabric and it's not sliding to the right or to the left as you go. And once you get to the end, you just lock it in place again. So lift the foot, pull the fabric out, leave yourself about 6 inches of thread, tuck it behind, and then you can look and see what you have so far. So you can see here's our neckline again, and here's our sleeve attached to it. Now we're just going to do the same thing with the other side, the other sleeve. We're going to attach it to the front of the bodysuit, if I can find it. And again, you want to make sure that the outside is facing each other. So whatever side of the fabric you want facing outward, which is, if you're using cotton spandex, it's the rib side. If you're using milliskin spandex, it's the slightly shiny side. You want that facing each other, and then you just go and do the same thing that we just did. Again, you lock your stitch, pull it out, give yourself about 6 inches of slack. Now we have both shoulders attached to the front of the bodysuits. Next, we're going to attach both shoulders to the back of the bodysuit. So you get that piece ready. Find the top, wherever that is. There we go. So you take this shoulder edge, and you're going to line it up with the shoulder edge on the sleeve. Again, make sure that the outside is facing in, facing toward each other. And then just do the same thing. Alright, once you finish that, you should have something like this going on. That shoulder is attached to both the front and the back. Now we're going to attach the other shoulder to the back. So just line it up just like you did before. Just like this. And sew along that edge. And once you have both sleeves attached, both the front and the back, you should have something like this. You could even pull that over your head if you want to see how it fits over your head. Now we're going to take the sleeve, fold it in half and line up the front edge of the sleeve with the back edge of the sleeve. Just like this. And you're going to feed that into the sewing machine. As always, lock it in place. And what you're going to do is you're going to stitch all the way down the edge of the sleeve to where the armpit meets. So those two seams should come together. The front shoulder seam and the back shoulder seam should meet right underneath the armpit. Alright, once you reach the armpit where the seams come together, without taking the fabric out or moving it at all, we're just going to continue on all the way down the side of the bodysuit to the ankle. So we're sewing the front and back of the bodysuit together now. And these dots that we put along the sides, you want to make sure that those line up, that the front dot lines up with the back dot all the way down the edge. That way you know that your fabric hasn't stretched or shifted at all. Alright, once you reach that bottom ankle, you're just going to take the fabric out, snip it, and we're going to switch over, kind of turn it over to the other leg, and we're going to go up the outside edge of the other side. So you're going to make sure everything's all lined up, and then you're going to take the two ankles on the other leg, face them together, and starting with that outside edge, we're going to sew from the ankle all the way up to the armpit. Again, you want to make sure that those dots line up all the way up. Okay, just like we did with the other side, when you reach the armpit where those two seams come together, we're just going to continue on without taking the fabric out along the edge of the sleeve. Alright, once you've reached the end of that sleeve, you should have your costume mostly done. All that we need to do now is the inseam of the legs here, but before we can stitch that, we need to put this diamond shaped piece in at the crotch. So take your bodysuit and lay it out, and kind of open this up so that those two layers are not on top of each other. Then take the diamond piece and lay it like this inside. And you want the point of the diamond, the narrower end, to line up with the center of the crotch. And then we're going to start stitching there. And once you've locked it in place, you want to carefully guide the edge along the curve of the leg. And so it should be attached like this right now. Now I'm just going to flip that over, and then starting from the same point, that center spot, right where we started stitching before, I'm going to sew it down the other side of that same leg, or the other side of that same piece. Once that's secure, you should have your diamond piece attached to one side, either the front or the back of your bodysuit. So it looks like this when you flatten it out. And now we're going to sew the legs together on the inseam, and as we come up the leg, instead of following the line of the other leg, once we get to this point here, we're going to attach the diamond to the inside as we come around. once you reach that diamond piece, you can see how the leg comes in this way, but the diamond piece is going out that way. You're going to want to carefully adjust as you go to make sure that your leg lines up with the diamond piece and that the point of the diamond ends up at the tip of the crotch. And then again, as you come back down the other side, you just want to carefully adjust that diamond pattern so that it stays right along the edge of the leg as you're coming down. Alright, once you've reached the end of that, then your entire bodysuit is completely sewn together and practically finished. The only thing we have left to do now is to add a zipper and hem the collar. Now, this step is going to be very different depending on what kind of costume you're making. There's a lot of different neck styles. It could be a turtleneck or a crew neck. You could just hem the collar in. Since this costume is going to be for a Superman costume, I'm going to show you how to do what's called a boat neck. It's going to be a little bit wider than what we originally cut, and it's going to have a separate piece of fabric that folds down over it in order to strengthen that collar edge. So we're going to take this and I'll show you how to do that. For this step, you're going to want to take your costume and spread it out on a nice flat surface face down. And then you're going to mark the length of your zipper straight down the back. Now, I'm using a 22-inch zipper, but the fabric will stretch a little bit as you sew it, and so I'm only going to mark it down to 17 inches or 18 inches. Now that I have that line, I'm going to put a couple of marks every so often. Just a small line that crosses over from one side to the other. This will help you keep your zipper lined up so you don't have one side of the costume stretched a lot and the other side only stretched a little and it looks awkward. By having those marks there, it'll help us line up the zipper. Once you've got those marks, then you just cut along that line down to where you drew. You want to be very, very careful here not to cut through both layers of fabric. You're just cutting one layer here. If you get both layers, then you're going to have a slit right down the front of your costume. There we go. Now we're ready to sew the zipper on. Alright, in order to attach the zipper, you're going to have to switch the foot on your sewing machine again. Take off your overlocking foot and switch to a zipper foot. It should be, if you have a Brother sewing machine, it's foot I. Otherwise, just look for one that's labeled zipper foot. And I always do the inside first, so you want the foot off to the left. And then you need to switch your stitch back to stitch 1. If you use any other stitch, you're probably going to mess up your sewing machine, so make sure you're on stitch 1. And then you're going to take your fabric, and you need to make sure that this fabric is turned right side out now. And then we're going to take the zipper, unzip it, and take the right side, flip it over face down on the right side of our cut. You're going to make sure that this the metal stopper at the top is lined up at the top of your fabric, and that the edge of the zipper is lined up with the edge of the fabric. And then you're just going to lay the presser foot down and you're going to carefully stitch. Now, like I said, the fabric will stretch a little bit as you sew, and that's okay. But don't stretch it on purpose. Just let it naturally stretch. Be very careful not to get the rest of your fabric underneath here as you sew. Now, you'll notice that even though I used a 22-inch zipper and I only made an 18-inch slit in the back of the costume, I have almost no extra zipper left. That's because the fabric just naturally stretched as I sewed, and that's good because that will allow the zipper to stretch a little bit when you put it on. So that's what you want to have happen, is for it to come down like this. Now, you remember those dots that we put on there, or those little lines that we made? You're going to take those little lines, you're going to zip that zipper back up, and then you're going to look at those little lines, and you're going to match them. You can't understand me when I do that. You're going to match those little lines up on the zipper itself, making similar lines on the back of the zipper. Okay, so now you have those 3 dots on the zipper, and you're going to make another dot on the opposite side of the zipper, lined up with the others. Then, as you sew, these dots will line up with the existing dots on your spandex. And you will have to stretch your spandex a little bit here and there to make sure that it lines up properly. Now we can unzip it. We're going to have to switch sides. This now goes over to the other side. Tuck your thread over there. And then again, you want to stretch your zipper up, flip it over so that the zipper edge is facing away from the edge of the fabric. Line up the little metal stopper at the top, and then just start sewing. And like I said, your dots here should line up with your dots on the zipper. Dots on the fabric, dots on the zipper. Once you reach the bottom of the zipper, both sides are secure, we just need to secure the bottom of the zipper really quick. So what you'll do is you'll zip it up a little bit, take that extra flap that's hanging out and tuck it inside. So that it comes through on the inside of the costume there. And then you want to flatten it out as best you can. And then we're just going to switch back to our normal foot really quick. And the easiest way to secure this is to go to a very wide zigzag stitch. On most machines that would be stitch number 4. And you want to, if you can, widen the stitch. The second setting here determines how wide that's going to be. And so I'm going to increase that to 5. That way we're going back and forth over the zipper without hitting any of the plastic parts. And then you just line that up inside here, get the zipper centered underneath the foot, and you're going to go forward for a few stitches onto the fabric, back for a few stitches, and then do it one more time just for good measure. There are other ways to secure the zipper there, but this is the quickest and easiest, and it'll keep the zipper from ripping or pulling out at the bottom. Now the very last thing I'm going to show you how to do is finish this collar. Of course we got a little bit of extra zipper here. I always just trim that off. You can fold it under if you want, but it's just quicker and easier to get out of the way if you trim it. And then of course you can seal that with a lighter. For a Superman costume or other similar ones, you're going to need a little bit more fabric. This is about 19 inches long, 20 inches long, and just about 3 inches wide. And so you're going to take this, and you're going to use your regular foot. You're going to lay this face to face against each other, just like that in the sewing machine. And you want to make sure that the edge of your fabric lines up with the edge of the neckline as you sew around it. We're going to use a stitch 3 for this one, and that is a straight stretch stitch. It's similar to a zigzag stitch, but it's a little tighter. So it looks like a straight stitch when you look at it, but it will stretch with the fabric. So first we're going to lock it in place, and then we're just going to go forward. As you come to those curves, you just want to adjust, make sure that your fabric here is lining up with the fabric on the neckline. Right. Once you get to the end of the other side of the neckline, you should have probably a little bit of fabric left over. You just trim that off. Make sure you keep a straight line as you trim off that excess. And then we're going to go back to the other side again. And we're going to take what we just sewed, we're going to fold it up and over, tucking it down around the edge of the neckline. And so that you have what looks like this. And then we're going to place that, make sure that you've got all that excess folded down. We're going to place that underneath the sewing machine, under the foot, and we're going to do the exact same stitch, keeping it very close to the bottom edge here of the neckline. And again, you're going to have to make sure that you continue to fold and tuck as you go to make sure that that stays nice and smooth all the way around the curved edge of the neck. Once you reach the edge there, we're going to go back and we're going to trim off this excess here that's just hanging there. We don't need that. So on the inside you're going to cut close to the stitch that we just made and just remove all this excess junk. There we go. And if you are still with me, then that means that your spandex bodysuit is finished and ready to try on. I'm going to go try this on and you guys can tell me how it looks. Well, I'm pretty happy with the way this costume turned out. It fits exactly the way I had hoped it would. You may notice that your sleeves are a little long or your legs are a little long, and that's okay. I intended for them to be. You can go back now and you can trim them off to the length you want it to be and then go ahead and hem them there. I hope that your costume turned out just as good, if not better than mine, and I hope that you're really happy with it. I want to encourage you to go ahead and subscribe to this channel. We've got some awesome new tutorials coming up soon. I'm going to show you how to make a slight modification to this bodysuit in order to turn it into a leotard. And then after that, I'm going to finally do that tutorial on how to make a believable, realistic muscle suit that can be worn under just about any costume. In the meantime, go watch some of our other videos, and don't forget to check out my new book, Holy Heroes, on holyheroes.org. As always, thanks for watching, God bless, and happy costuming.